Merci.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 3-0 Global Forum. Hello, everyone. Welcome to you here in Palais Brongniart in Paris. And I'm looking at the cameras to say hello to those who are following us online from all around the world. If we're here today, it's because we wanted to be good, get back to school. We're back to school. Everyone is. That's the current mood. Just like every year, time for projects, for new resolutions, new ambitions. So today we'll play that game together. It's also a time to meet. We have fun stories for each other's. But this year, it's a little bittersweet because we remember the forest fires, droughts, dried up rivers, conflict. We also know that young children, young girls don't have the privilege to prepare going back to school. But as usual, this is not new. So I must tell you that we're a little nervous, a little anxious at Convergence with our 300 partner organizations from all around the world because urgency is now. We've spent 15 beautiful years identifying some incredible projects with strong potential or impact for a more fair and sustainable world. We spent 15 years identifying specific projects, solutions that help build a better world. But now, raising awareness is over. It's not time to alert on climate change or social inequalities and growing gaps. During this 3-0 Global Forum, along with our founding organizations, Acted, Crédit Coopératif, who I'd like to thank, we want to reiterate that call for mobilization to act efficiently in order to resolve the multiple crises of our century. Our mandate for this forum is very simple, necessary but ambitious. During those 2 days, we must provide the necessary resources and tools to each citizen, to each organization, to each structure, so that they can contribute every day to a 3-0 world, the zero exclusion, zero carbon, zero poverty. That's the message that we are spreading, that we are saying with great conviction and vibrancy, and that we recommend you join. For this new edition, after 15 years, we have decided to stop working in silo on reduction of inequalities, economical issues, and climate change. We demand that those topics are taken into account at global level in an integrated manner, working with synergies. Social justice and environmental transition work together, and we must face those two together. I hope you're comfortable in this beautiful place, Palais Brongniart, at home as well, behind your screens, because we have 2 days of work. Make sure you're comfortable, but not too much. Things might be uncomfortable. It's time for us to move on further, to be more specific. And during those 2 days of dialogue, we need to create partnerships, create projects, and to work together towards this ambition, 3-0, zero carbon, zero poverty, and zero exclusion. This message is not from Acted or Crédit Coopératif, it's from all of us. It's a message that we spread throughout the world. You'll see it today and tomorrow. This message is telling. It's here to make the UN vocabulary more mainstream. Most of us know it, but outside of here, most people don't know it. So today, I invite you to put the date on your agenda, to write the message, to carry it with your students, your colleagues, your family, and to always move on towards that direction. Today, there will be more than 50 roundtables, workshops, dialogues, more than several dozens of representatives are present in the little village. They can get in contact with you to have more impact. There'll be interactive activities and others to have a more immersive experience. And since this year and the coming years, we want to have a holistic vision. Arts and culture will have a significant place in those 2 days, and also the voice of the youth. So we want to send a call to commitment, to urgency, but it's also a message of hope, because if you're here today with the other 300 speakers, it means that there are actions, that there is progress, and our mission today is to accelerate further. Before I give the floor to Frédéric Roussel, our founding president, I'd like to quote him. He told me this yesterday. Unfortunately, we often have to hit rock bottom to bounce back. We've been hearing this for years, that we're close to rock bottom, and I think we can admit that we're there now, so we just need to find that momentum and really go for it. Frédéric Roussel also wanted to share with you a strong message, an archive from INA. You may have scrolled through those videos on YouTube already, a video from the 70s, going back into time, looking at the customs and habits of France in the 70s. In 1974 then, this is the message that we heard from a green candidate at the elections. That was René Dumont in 1974. Frédéric Roussel, I will let you react to this video which you chose. Almost 40 years ago, René Dumont invited us to meet on a Monday, and 40 years later, we're here. We're getting old indeed. For the oldest in the room, which I'm part of, I saw this video live at the time. And we were thinking, this guy was crazy. But he's not that crazy in the end. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm speaking to you in the room, but also all the people watching us on the internet. This morning, we have participants from more than 50 countries.
Good morning in English. For the 15th Forum of Acted in Paris. I won't speak in English very long because nobody will understand my English in this room, and actually nobody will understand my English by video. I mean, let's go back to French, and I hope the live translation is working everywhere. Thank you for all of you globally to be present this morning. Alors,
I would like to continue with Mr. Raymond's metaphor with the glass of water. There are two ways to see what's going on now, a glass half full or a glass half empty. Let's start with the half empty one. That will be easier. we cannot really say that nothing positive happened over the past 40 years. That would be an insult to statistics. In 74, when René Raymond talked to us, half of the global population lived under the poverty line or threshold. Some of us used to smoke, unfortunately, which accounts for less than a pack of cigarettes per day. 3 years ago, global population had doubled, no longer 4 billions, but 8 billions. And the number of people living in extreme poverty went from 50% of the global population to 1 billion. 3 to 4 billions, yes, not millions, right? 3 to 4 billion people came out of poverty within 40 years. This might sound a little theoretical in France, but it's not in poor countries or former poor countries, as we will probably join them soon. So this is quite significant. Over the past 40 years, we saw the greatest growth of wealth in the history of humanity and the greatest reduction of hunger in the history of humanity in the past 40 years. But sticking to France, since René Raymond talked to us, the overall life expectancy grew by 12 years. And as I said, up until 3 years ago, hunger was regularly decreasing, which is very good news. Innovation, which the candidate for the presidency did not talk much about, has changed our life. IT, every day, before your eyes, you have a machine that includes more knowledge and more information than any human being could ever hold in 1974. Which is quite significant. And this innovation can be perceived in many ways. It's such spectacular progress, such an incredible progress that we can appreciate that. However, this progress was made private by its founders, who have now become some of the richest people in the world. Of course, we all have specific interests in that respect, but we're still facing that half-full glass. Unfortunately, it's also half empty. Even Mr. Raymond, who could be perceived as a bad news announcer, had a very positive view. I don't know who created that concept of Anthropocene, but we all know now that we have now entered this concept of Anthropocene, meaning humans, after colonizing the planet, are now changing it. And unfortunately, over the past 50 years, that change has not been positive. So the question now is to know whether Anthropocene will end up with the 6th extinction, or if we will manage to stop it. But one must recognize it. This is clearly a half-empty glass. Will we disappear? Because over the past 150 years, what we call progress and growth have completely exhausted our planet. Every year, and that was not mentioned at the time, the utilization rate of renewable resources on the planet takes 2 weeks. That's happened this year. And at this pace, if we do nothing, within 20 to 30 years, we will have already wasted what the planet can produce for a year within the month of January. So this is clearly an empty, half-empty glass next to the half-full one. So, as a famous author said, what can we do? The latest events over the past 2 years and more have shown that, just like Anatole France said, after World War I, our civilization already know that it's mortal. And now we really know this. COVID showed humanity that a global disease could one day kill. Shouldn't we find a cure? For many of us, it turned out to be a 2 months lockdown and the expectation for vaccines. And thank God science is here to help us overcome those challenges. But in the countries of the South, it turned into a return of poverty. 6 years of poverty reduction were cancelled within 2 months. And now poverty is higher than it was before COVID. Luckily enough, our state and our social net helped us, safety net helped us overcome this situation, but for vulnerable countries that wasn't the case. And ACTED, one of the founding organizations of Convergence, which is a humanitarian organization, is witnessing every day what this means, this return of poverty. And COVID was only the start. The war in Ukraine, the return of war in Europe, which deeply shocked us, that really shocked us. But it was also the re-emergence of ghosts that we hope to forget. The war in Ukraine is not only the war in Ukraine. During several weeks, it was the ghost of a global famine. Russia and Ukraine are no longer exporting wheat, so how can we feed a large part of humanity? I won't even mention the nuclear issues which have re-emerged as well. Should 2 events, a hard flu epidemics and a war that is only happening in one country, help us understand that any progress can be destroyed within just a few months? If we start talking about a risk of famine again, and China just announced that its cereal production was down by 20% this year, if those countries reduce their cereal production by 20% within a year, then what can happen? And that's due to the climate. So yes, we do realize that everything we've done, that this progress, that all of this is very fragile, then We must take note of it and see how we can react. In France, we just had a glimpse of this. Heat waves are accelerating in France, but nobody's really feeling threatened or is worried that they might find food tomorrow. But with a more holistic vision, we can see that a situation is back. A question is back. Will we be able to sustainably feed all the inhabitants of this planet? Just 2 years ago, I wouldn't even have thought I would ever ask this question, but now we must ask the question. Two, let's say, minor crises are threatening the stability of the world. What's going on in Sri Lanka could happen anywhere. Countries can crumble and an entire population can have its lifestyle crumble and famine can appear again. And just to quote Fanny, it's a little urgent. But yes, indeed, when you hit rock bottom, you have two options. We'll choose the first one, which is to bounce back and get up again. But we can no longer forget how fragile this all is. This is crucial. We must act with reason, be humble, and be realistic. I'm usually not a huge fan of utopia. There's not always great intention behind it, and the results are not always there. But we must be ambitious and have that in mind, this urgency. Thank you very much, Fred. I'm not done. Give me a minute. We still have a lot to do. So I just got a reminder that we must be very fast. I will be. So what should we do? We're talking about frugality. Of course, we must be more frugal, especially us countries of the North. We're the main responsible people for this situation, and we're less impacted. We're also talking about degrowth. And I can tell you that I work with refugees, I work in slums, and it's hard for me to tell our beneficiaries to be frugal. Yes, indeed, we must be frugal, but the solution is not degrowth. It must be a reasonable growth, which should not lead to further Anthropocene. And since I've been asked to conclude, I will pass on what I wanted to say, but I think that Convergence message is a modest, realistic message, but an ambitious one, saying that we should be one of the speakers or represent all those initiatives happening in the field and trying to find a solution to accelerate this transition to something new. And now that we have decided to make Convergence a global movement, we've already organized more than 10 events in the world, almost 20 now. Almost 20. And within 5 years, we'll be everywhere in all countries. And we want to make Convergence a global movement. We just don't want to meet and talk. We want to think about being a global movement around one slogan: zero poverty, zero carbon, zero exclusion. I would put zero inequalities on the side. Inequalities have increased a lot over the past 20 years, supported by talent. transmission or heritage. However, stopping inequalities is a little complicated. However, zero poverty, zero carbon, zero exclusion is doable. And it's doable by keeping on being reasonable and following progress. I will conclude by mentioning a few economists and thinkers. It's always interesting to remember who thought before us. Globalization, as Adam Smith said, as Schumpeter and Carlito, I hope I'm not wrong. These are all memories. The invisible hand of the market, the creating destruction and comparative advantage. That was globalization. That was the time that provided the greatest growth of resources in the history of humanity. But now we are in a touchy situation where the global population, if we want the global population to have a decent life, this will have an impact on the resources of the planet that is 3 or 4 times higher than the current one. The creation of middle class in China was very positive for those who were impacted, but less for the south of the planet. So how can we manage to give a decent wage to all people on the planet so that they can educate their children while saving this planet? That is what's at the center of the debates. And on a personal level, I think that rationality must prevail, and the way we reorient our growth, understanding that we are facing finite resources. So, between those growing inequalities and this population that has grown very fast, one could think that, based on what Adam Smith said, we are in a moment that says this message: there's too many of us, and stop inequalities. I will let you analyze the situation, but these are thoughts that are trendy again. Of course, solutions can vary, but we are in that moment, and we must face this moment with honesty.
And I'll finish with that. Yes, I understand. There's one thing I don't want, is that Kent was right. At the end, we are all black. He loved to say that. And I want to show Kent that at the end, that he was wrong. And that's what I will be finishing with. And I will now let the second organization represented by Pierre Valentin, who will present their point of view, the second organizer of Convergence. Pierre, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Fred, for sharing your vision with us and the reality that ACTED is facing on a daily basis. Morning all. Morning to everyone in the room, but also everybody that is online. I would like to first thank Convergence that is giving me the possibility to speak in front of you in the name of the Crédit Coopératif, who is one of the founders of this forum. I remember 15 years ago the vision that Frederick had and ACTED had of an event, a forum, where different people from across the society, NGOs, social society, companies could meet and that could converge into one place and try to get all those point of views that can sometimes be quite different to converge together, to discuss and to share, but also to act and to go towards this zero exclusion, zero carbon, zero poverty objective. This topic was quite new at the time, and we can see that again today. Act to reconcile ecological transition and social justice. This is not something simple because there is a huge difference of treatment between the social question and the ecological one. On the green side, there's a mobilization like we've never had before, with effects that I believe are still quite light and not as strong as they could be or should be. But they are gathering people and they're mentioned in the media quite a lot. And we've got the GIEC that is working hard on that, and the spread of efforts is quite well spread everywhere. The IPCC. And this is, I think, new across humanity. Everybody is supposed to know what they're supposed to do in a question that is a macro one. Even central banks are thinking about global warming. It's a question for everyone. But on the social side of things, there's nothing comparable. Of course, there is the development objectives, but on social justice, the question is more raised by NGOs on one side and by states. It's a political question. So on an individual level, there is no particular objective in terms of social justice. But those two questions are actually quite close together, quite linked. We're talking about solidarity towards the next generation, because the effect of global warming, even if we can see it already, will have mainly impact on our children and grandchildren. So this link with future generation is important, this link, and how can we have a link with future generation without having one with the excluded current generations? So on the IPCC question, there is the question of the social question is present as well. But there's also this ecological question. There is the question of not having access to energy. But we shouldn't think that the only problem is lack of protection in our houses. That's not the question. And even in the richer countries, the poorer part of the population have already reached the level of reduction in CO2 that people have, that those countries have as an objective for 2050. So this question of social ecology is really will become more central, and this link between social and ecology will become clearer as we come. And we will have to look into the influence of the social question on the environmental one. So I've not come to speak on a very abstract level, but as a banker, I wanted to come and talk to you also on how we can act to try and reconcile those two topics, and what action we can lead to try and meet those objectives. So I'm going to talk about the bank I know best, which is the Crédit Coopératif. It's quite well known in the social economy. There are we can commit to things. We've decided not to finance fossil energies, but we've also committed to other questions, which are older topics, which is the idea of using finance to have a better social impact. So we've developed a range of products that allow our clients to choose towards what NGO the interests of their money would go. So this is something that is decided either by the customers or by the bank, but very often a combination of both. It's also a very good way to look at what's happening, because it can show us what customers decide to go for. You know, they choose an NGO. There are quite a lot of them. Some of them are more towards the ecological question, others more towards the social question. And we see that it's quite well spread over the different kinds of NGOs. And there's no real priority for one or the other. We also gave the possibility to our customers so that their money finance specific sectors. And there are 3 topics: act for the planet, act for a better society, fairer society, and act for new entrepreneuriat, which means lend money to companies that are more participative or redistribute better or work for insertions of people and so on. And 57% choose the social and impact, and less than 50% choose the green associations. When we vote to decide where we will put our money, we try to look at how much money their directors are earning, and we try for that to be fair. And this question of inequality, and Frédéric didn't want to mention that too much, but we also voting against high remunerations of directors, because we think there should be a fair repartition of the wages across the companies. I was finishing, so that's perfect. So what we are convinced of is that finance is a level and has a power of leverage, and we believe that this is something we can do, and that's what we're expecting over the next 2 days. Thank you very much for being alongside us over the last 15 years, and all our partners will be. I'll have the opportunity to talk across those 2 days. The voice that we shouldn't forget, and we've mentioned it before, but it's the voice of young people at international level. And to start that part of the topic, I want to give the voice to a Tunisian NGO, which is called Wheel of Sousse. You've got 15 minutes exactly, Yanis. So how does this 3-0 is happening in Tunisia? How is it on the ground? Welcome, Anis. You've got 2 minutes, so just use them well. Fred always has a lot of time, and I just have a little bit. Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, Fanny. Thank you to the entire Convergence team for inviting us today. If I'm in front of you today, I feel very humble in front of everything that is happening across the world. Fred mentioned that you can hit rock bottom, and I feel that we go below rock bottom and we just go deep into the ground at the moment. We spoke about war, we spoke about poverty, inequality. Welcome in our world, a world of war, of inequalities. We have that on a daily basis. We've lived through that over the last dozens of years. There's so many different wars that happened. And unfortunately, this was all across the Middle East. There were so many, and now it's in Europe. But unfortunately, we are not in Europe, but we lived through that war as well. We see all the problems that are arising with that, and hunger that are linked to that, and all of this. We are idealists, that's what we work for. We work for an ideal, but sometimes the present is so hard to live through that it's hard to think about the future. But I want to mention that even though we are not responsible for all those dramatic events all across the world, we are responsible for finding a solution together. It's a world that has been built for mankind, and we might reach a level where there will be no space, no place for mankind because of global warming, and we live through that every day. Could you give us a word for the 3-0 clubs? I've got 1 minute left. Okay, so it's thinking about all that we wanted to be responsible and try to find solutions to those problems we've mentioned. And in partnership with Convergence and Acted, we've created those 3Z clubs. It's to help those present and future generation to be involved in finding solutions. So I'm at the head of academic organization, and I'm pleased to say are here with us today. And I invite you to come to the presentation of the 3Z clubs that we've launched in Tunisian universities. We'll present about that. Because I'm from Tunisia, I present two revolutions. A revolution in the world of development. Convergence helped me to have a vision of development, but I think it's time to really act, and that through those 3Z clubs, with young people in universities, they will carry that development and they will speak about what we're trying to do. Zero exclusion, zero carbon, zero poverty, not only in universities, but also in the perception that that people have all across the country, all citizens, by creating change within universities, because they are the heart of change, change across society. This is happening in university, but it has an impact everywhere. So I invite you to come to our panel and I'm announcing that there will be change, there will be a revolution, there will be a launch of a worldwide web of those 3Z clubs. We are dreaming together a better world, and I thank you all for that. Thank you, Anis, for this launch of a revolution. Young people in universities, yes, this is something we want to do across the world, but it's not only universities. So I'm very happy to go down from the stage and invite 3 young people to come up on stage. Nisrine, please, can you applaud her, and also Jean-Baptiste et Chantil. Please present yourself, and you can speak in front of the Grand Auditorium.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, everyone.
I'll be speaking in English, but my name is Chantal Nieto, and along with me is Jean-Baptiste. Supposedly joining us here today is Nisrin, but you know the work of everyone here. we don't stop working. And I think she just got called into work today. So you're stuck with the two of us. But so my name is Chantel. I currently am the 3-0 officer for ACTED. So I work on zero poverty, zero exclusion, and zero carbon. And I've been doing that for more than 7 years now. So I founded organizations that have provided electricity, water, food, and with us here today is Nisrin. So work never stops, but the 3-0 forum is more important.
Glad you made it.
So yes, so we've done work for marginalized communities all around the country. We've provided their basic needs. So we've done, again, food, water, electricity, disaster relief, education, and employment for 500,000 people across 16 cities and 11 hospitals in the Philippines. I also help co-run Sustainable PH, which is the country's first association for sustainability professionals nationwide and organization that pushes for sustainability in the country. So we have about 1,200 to 2,000 aspiring and current sustainability leaders, and we run everything from capacity building programs to public and corporate advisory services. So everything we do to push forward a world and a country where there will be no poverty, no exclusion, and hopefully no excess carbon that damages the world we have today. John Baptiste, let us know what you do and I guess the work that's been done so far in your country.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So I'll be speaking in English as well for Chantal and Nisrin, so pardon my French accent. So I'm Jean-Baptiste Boisseau. I'm a junior fellow at the Open Diplomacy Institute, and I'm here because I was the head of the French delegation this year at the Youth 20. For those who do not know how it works, it's the engagement group for youth people among the G20 Secretariat. So basically we are providing policy recommendations to G20 leaders, and we have the same thing for G7 leaders because France is part of both organizations. And our idea is to provide in selected topics. So we had like 4 main priority groups: digital transformation, climate and biodiversity, diversity and inclusion, and youth employment. Policy recommendations for them to be taken into account at the real G20, if I might say. And the idea is to be, of course, bold, ambitious, more than the G20 leaders, because it's something that we've seen over the years. Usually they are not very ambitious, and at the moment, I think it was highlighted by the previous speakers, it's definitely what we need. And the idea is to be working with other delegations from the G20 members. And I think it was very important, I might come back to that afterwards, but it's very important that we've seen that it's possible to work with other countries. As an example, I'll say a big thing as a French. It was a pleasure to work with the Russian delegation, actually. Like, they have very bold idea, and depending on the topic, you can really, as youth people, without being binded by any political agenda or lobbies or things like that, you can really advance things forward. So I might come back to that later.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste, and Nisrin, of course.
Hi, from the street to the stage. Hi, everyone. I'm very glad also to be here with you today. I'm Nisrin Assaim from Sudan. I am going to speak about like 3 main activities that we are doing. I started doing climate activism 10 years ago. It was January 2012. And I think it's been quite a journey now, from being an activist in 2012 to be the chair of the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. As a youth advocate and as someone who's dealing with an issue like climate change, it's always challenging to coming from a country like Sudan, although we all know that Sudan is one of the very vulnerable countries to climate change, and it's one of the least developed countries or the LDCs, yet accessing things was very hard for us for many different reasons, all linked to development. And a lot of people ask me why I started doing climate activism, and the actual answer, not the fancy one, is just I was bored from school. But no, because also the political situation in our country is not stable. It have never been stable at all. And unfortunately, politicians and political situation always influence the everything. So we had a problem in the university when I was a freshman, and it was a bit aggressive from the government. So 2 students died, and the university closed for 3 months. And so I had nothing to do in these 3 months. And then I was doing physics, and then I was like, okay, we can have a lot of science in this world, but unfortunately politicians are going to run the world, no matter less how much science we have. So I was trying to look for like integration between science and politicians or politics, and I discovered something on Google. Google is my best friend, by the way, called science diplomacy, which is using scientific knowledge in diplomatic discussion. And the 2 main topics at that time for science diplomacy was actually water, because countries share water, and climate change. But climate change was by far closer to the topic of physics, of course, but also it was very relevant to the situation that we were living in the country. And if you are following the news, you can see Pakistan and the flood of Pakistan everywhere. Unfortunately, it's the same in Sudan, even worse a little bit, because we have the Nile, the river, and in a lot of countries around the world. So helping the communities, trying to do something about what's happening is what we are trying to do. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I think generally what I've noticed from all of the work that we do is it's very important to influence leadership that we have. So in and by our own rights, we're all leaders here. And yet we know that we're not at the top of the food chain just yet. And so it's very important that we find ways to make our voices heard, to get our leaders, whether it's the G20 leaders or the politicians in Sudan or all across the world, to listen to what we have to say, because we have something to say. What I've noticed, even from politicians in the Philippines, is that they are willing to listen, but you have to state the proper message. And what I've seen work whenever I work with both politicians and leaders is to present a solution to them in a simple way. Because, leaders will be leaders. They focus more on what's high level, what's grand, what's macro.
Or we be leaders.
Yes, exactly. We'll be
Vote
leaders.
for me, everyone. Running for presidency.
Will be. So it has to be in a very simple way, but also it has to be there, because they can't necessarily be bothered with technicalities. I wonder, is that the same? For instance, you, Jean-Baptiste, you're trying to put forward an agenda, right? A of recommendations for G20 leaders. How's that been? And in what ways are you framing your messages so that you're sure that when you present it to them, it'll actually be something they'll pick up?
Yeah, of course. I think that's very interesting what you said. Like the idea is really to have a message, because most of the things that we need to do are actually already on the table. I'll take the example of the environmental crisis. Like we have a wonderful tool that is called the IPCC, le GIEC, and of course, like everything that we need to implement is already stated. Like we have the agenda, and the idea is just to put forward the message. And taking back on that example, I think the idea is to have really an ambitious message. I'll take the example of the share of land and marine areas that we want to protect. Like the G7 was talking about maybe 30%. That was the same at the One Ocean Summit at the beginning of this year. And actually, we acknowledged that it would be better to have 50%, of that. And I think that putting forward a very ambitious and a very bold target is the best way to finally land at maybe 30, 35. I'm not I know that Frederick mentioned that he does not believe in utopia. I do not believe in utopia as well. But I think that we really need to push something very ambitious in order to land at something that would really be helpful, because we need that at the moment.
That's so true. No, I definitely agree. And I wonder, apart from getting leaders to listen to us, Nisrin, like based off of your experience, how do we create leaders of ourselves so much so that when we stand in front of someone, they don't see our age. They see that we're someone who is necessary in the table. How do we make the leaders see that we're also leaders right now?
I think it's impossible to just erase your face and make someone think that you're older. But the fact that we are young, but we have our own professionals, we are young, but we have our knowledge and capabilities, we are young, but we have experience. I mean, linking age to experience is not fair in many ways, especially in this time that we are living. As the Youth Advisory Group for the UN Secretary General, we meet His Excellency Antonio Guterres 4 times a year, every 3 months. And I can tell you, he meets us more than any other advisories, even high level, even his like other teams. And that's for 2 main reasons. Of course, one of the reasons that how important and on top of the agenda the climate issue is, but also because young people proved around the world that climate change is something that we care about because it's our future and we can take steps for that. And of course, I think we already proved our places. The second thing is I am part of, and that's why I'm in Paris, part of Marianne Initiative for Human Rights Defenders. And it's an initiative by President Macron. He launched it in the International Day of Human Rights. And we are 16 women from around the world: Sudan, Tanzania, Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Palestine, China, Myanmar, like different countries, trying to actually advocate for human rights. And it's very important for me because for a long time people did not consider environment and climate change as human rights. But now, after the adoption of the resolution on a clean environment as part of the human rights, and it will be added to the main declaration, it happened recently in the General Assembly, everyone now talks about the inclusion on the link between climate change and human rights. And for me, it was always there, because if you don't have clean environment, then you might die, and then you will lose the most important right, which is the right for life in the first place. Also, because I'm coming from a country like Sudan, climate change always caused a lot of wars and conflicts. So the connection between environment and human security was very obvious for me. I remember in 2007, the previous Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said about the war in Darfur and everything as the first climate-driven war. And as we are seeing now around the world, we are having more and more conflicts, either because of the climate change directly, or because of fuel and fossil fuels, like what's happening now. And everyone knows the problems of Russia and the gas and the fossil fuel, and how buying fossil fuel is actually fueling war, and etc. And everything is linked, because when the war happened, we had a food security crisis, and when we have a food security crisis, I mean, everything is very much interlinked together. And I can talk until tomorrow, so please stop me.
It's okay, I face the same thing over and over again. But actually, I think that's what's important, right? You told me, oh, I talk too much, stop me. And I think that shows how, like, we don't do these things alone. We need people checking up on us, checking in on us, supporting us through what we do. And usually, it's us ourselves. And I've seen that. So, for instance, with Sustainable PH, one of our nonprofits for sustainability, we really bring sustainability leaders in the country together. Because right now, we're siloed. We have the environmentalists. We have those for corporate social responsibility. We have advocates. We have corporate executives. And yet, they're not always speaking. But sustainability and sustainable development is always a collaborative effort. And so we need to bring people together. And I think that's the same for all of our spaces. And for us, we've built that organization so we can build their capacity, but also give them that space to collect and collaborate. I'm interested for Jean-Baptiste and Nisreen, how have you been doing it for your organizations? How do you bring young people together so our voices are amplified and louder for everyone else to hear and follow as well?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I would return the question to you, actually, Chantal.
My turn.
Because I was going to raise exactly that point, because like the theme is to achieve social justice, and I think that among youth that are involved, like there is still like only part of the youth that are represented. You know, we like the information really spread across all typologies of youth, all profiles, you know, that have been working from the young age, you know, that attended the university, that are already working on different fields and topics. And that's really, I think, very important. And I would be taking any idea about that, like in order to improve that, how we can overcome those stereotypes, you know. I encountered several times the fact that young people should only give ideas and their opinion on young labeled topics, I would say, like sports education and things like that. And when you are trying to raise things about matters of security, you know, economics and all that, they're like, okay, let the big boys play, you know, and that's not what you're gonna do. And I think that's really a stereotype that we need to overcome, you know. We have experience in those topics, and as you mentioned, we need a holistic view, and that's exactly the theme today. Like, I really like that logo, you know, the zero is not zero exclusion, then zero carbon, then zero poverty. We really need to have like a global zero, and that's exactly why we need to have youth representative in all fields and all topics, in my opinion.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I think, well, so I saw 3 questions there, so I'll answer all of them. The first one I think you asked was, how do you get the youth to be more active? Because only a microcosm of the youth today are actually out there doing things for the planet. And for me, like if Naisrin was bored because she didn't have anything over the 3-week break. The reason I started in the impact space was because I wanted to go to London. So my parents, they didn't allow me to go on a foreign exchange program. And then the HALT Prize, which is a social entrepreneurship competition, came to our country. And the logic was, like, I'm a very logical person. I said, if we win this, there's no reason my parents won't allow me to go to London next year to compete in the regional finals. Like, I had no experience on poverty, on social entrepreneurship, on case competitions, but I said, won't be that hard, I can do this. And we did. But before that, the competition even started, I got immersed in various marginalized communities, especially along my own hometown. And I saw how poverty cripples people to the core. I saw how a lack of access to basic needs deprives people even of the right to choice. The choice to leave, the choice to live, the choice to dream of another life. And I felt as if that's something that no one ever deserves to have. And we're standing here in front of you because we had the opportunity to choose something for ourselves, but a lot of people don't. And so I promise that I won't leave, not until they can too. And that's why I continue to do the work I do. But not a lot of people see that. Not a lot of people see worlds that are different from their own, especially if they come from a position of privilege. So they focus on sports. Like, I was an athlete, so I love sports. But the point is to get people, to get our peers to go outside, to speak to other people, to see worlds different from their own, because that's where empathy comes from. And it's only through empathy that we start to care, and we start to act, and we start to see that there are things that need to be changed in this world. And so, thank you. And so I think part of our messaging is, yes, in reaching out to leaders, but also in reaching out to our peers, our groups, because the more people are active, the more people care, the stronger we are in getting our voice heard and our causes actually fulfilled. Naisrin, I'm sure you'll have more to add to that as well.
Thank you. Well, adding to the point of solidarity, because our group is very diverse, it's very common that me and our colleague from Belarus, Tatiana, for example, and another colleague from Colombia, and we see the 3 of us, we are coming from a total different continent, total different context, but then we see a lot of common things. I mean, some of the similarities, I mean, of course, there's different privileges between the continents and the countries, but we share a lot of things in common. So I think if everyone took a moment and have like a deep thinking of someone else's case, I mean, I'm sure we will find a lot of similarities. But going back to your question regarding capacity building, actually, unfortunately, we don't. And the simple answer for that is resources. As someone from Sudan, it is still unfortunately very hard to reach resources, and that's for very simple reasons. But then when I became the chair of the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, I was like, okay, now I have a position, everyone know me, I will write bankable, very perfect projects, and I will find donors like this to fund my projects, but it did not happen. And as part of the Mariana Initiative, I was also asked to develop a project, and I called my project Bridge of Humanity. And the idea of the project is linking civil society from France by civil society from Sudan on three main topics: climate change, of course, gender equality, and human rights. Because for me, all of them link very much together. So, I mean, I'm using this stage, of course, to recruit you all in my project, the Bridge of Humanity. So if you have an NGO and you wish to work in Sudan, even if you don't have an experience yet, please feel free to reach me. And if you want to work in climate change and you want to support young women Sudanese, also please reach me out. I think, and also to close this, one of the main important thing that we share, the three of us, is we took an action. It doesn't really matter what was the first reason of that, but taking action is the first step and is the most important, and then things will follow from there. So if you want to do something and you don't know how to start, it doesn't need a lot of thinking. And there was a say that says, if you want to walk far, we walk together. If you want to walk fast, you walk alone. And unfortunately, we are in a time where we have to walk fast and far at the same time. So individual actions are very important, but also being part of a group and working together, networking is also very important. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. I think we can all applaud to that as well. Partnerships is important. And it's not always easy to come by, but I found that it's very much possible, as you said, through bridging organizations together, or also through asking a question. And I guess to just push forward just one last point, no? I think generally, if there's anything I've learned over the past years, it's that anyone can be your partner if only you know how to approach them. And you can only know how to do that if you listen to them. Someone once told me that confidence, and I think this is something that we have to develop, especially as youth and as youth leaders. She said, confidence is not knowing that you're better than everyone else in the room. It's knowing that you're not any less. And I think that's very important, and that's such a very humble way of going about things, especially when we're trying to convince someone to join what we believe in. It's about coming in, stepping forward, and saying, this is what I see, this is the vision. What do you see? What do you need? And how might I support you in getting there? That's how our One Kainta food program has over 70 organizational partners now, because we don't only get donations from companies to provide food to 1,000 people every day. We work with them. We help solve their inventory challenges. So we approach things based off of what value can I provide you as a partner. And that usually gets people and organizations to write in. I think that's something that we all can leave this forum with, that active listening skill, that skill of knowing that any connection you have can bring forth so many possibilities for collaboration and impact. And that if we continue acting, just do it, you know? If we continue acting, then we'll get to where we want to go, especially at this age of technology and innovation where, honestly, anything is possible. So I'm giving you, Jean-Baptiste, just 40 more seconds to say your final words, and then we can all let everyone enjoy the rest of the forum.
Yeah, thank you, Chantal. I'll be brief. It's just that I wanted to react to the idea, what you said about having all connection matters in being like in thriving, having a thriving engagement. I would say that the companies, and I think Pierre highlighted it very well during his presentation, companies have a really big role in giving space to youth people, you know, on their agendas and all that. I see that your schedules, and I know that your schedules are very busy, and you do not have to work, you should not have to work 80 hours per week in order to have an engagement, a youth engagement. So it should be something that is valued among companies because you spend a lot of time in them, or in universities. I know that universities are doing this quite well. Companies are not very good. So that would be my last call, my last appeal to those who are listening.
Thank you. And one last sentence. I think what we'd like to end is the youth, we don't just deserve a seat at the table. We're needed at the table. So thank you for having us here today, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the forum.
How inspiring, and this is actually quite a lesson you're serving us today, so thank you very much. Jean-Baptiste, Chantil, Nisrine, merci d'avoir été là avec nous aujourd'hui.
Jean-Baptiste, Chantal, Nisrine, thank you for being here. Collaboration, partnership, everyone has skills, everyone has a place. So it's now your turn to take your place during those 2 days to link social justice and environmental transition. Thank you very much to the members of the groups who organized the conferences, the workshops. This was done in collaboration. Convergence is a multi-stakeholder partnership. Thank you to the stakeholders. Thank you to the participants in person and online. You can interact through different functions available. And without further ado, I wish you an excellent forum. Have a great day.